there's multiple vocals going on there, and it gives me, again, unqualified, a bit of like Aussie feeling. And I had to say in the reaction, that's Ozzy Osbourne, not Australian. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Audiophiles, you bastard. My name's John. His name is Andy. I left my baby, and it feels so bad. I guess my race is run. She's the best girl that I ever had. More on that later. So, we've got a track to listen to today, selected by Brother Andy. What do you got for us?
Well, we've talked about grunge music, the big four. You're obviously very familiar with Nirvana. You've got an opinion that's pretty codified on Pearl Jam, but I introduced you last year, Alice in Chains, and that went over pretty well with you. So I thought, we will revisit Alice in Chains in the year 2026. I'll bring some more to the table, but I also wanted to finally bring some Soundgarden to the channel as well, who in a lot of ways are kind of like the first of the big four here of the grunge bands out of America, that really represented the Pacific Northwest at that time. So I'd like to give you one of their very early tracks, one called Hunted Down. So how familiar are you at this point with Soundgarden? I know you know they exist, but like their catalog.
I've heard it in passing.
Yeah.
Didn't take much of an interest in it.
Okay, that's fair. At least you're honest in your assessment, but here's a chance to give a track of theirs that I'm sure you haven't heard before a full listen, and you can let me know your thoughts on it. So please go off, give it a spin, and we can do just that, John.
Interesting. So it starts with this sort of sound effects. Kind of remind me of a small plane, model plane, sort of nose diving. And then comes this guitar riff. I think because of the tone of it, it reminded me of the Dead Kennedys. Yeah, and then we go to ugh! And in comes the rest of the band, bass and drums, and we got this very sort of muscular sound that comes from a place of rock. For my untrained ears, kind of reminded me of Black Sabbath. The very little I know of them. But yeah, and then we get this second guitar coming in with all this interesting little effects on it and dissonance and interesting weird notes, and I really like that. It's kind of Sonic Youth in a way, sort of early Sonic Youth. Yeah, nice. They were on Sub Pop, weren't they? So maybe there's been some cross pollination there. But yeah, it sounded good. And then in comes your man, Mr. Connell, singing away. Yeah, let's see how it goes. If it's early in the career, the kind of thumbnails making me think that, but his voice for a very short bit just reminded me of Ian Astbury from The Cold. which I'm sure that fans of neither band would appreciate me pointing that out. Maybe it's just a trick of my ear and the thumbnail making me think about that. But yeah. Guess that was the chorus or refrain bit there with the multiple voices. Again, untrained ear, but it kind of made me think it sounded a bit Aussie, not Australian, Aussie Osbourne. In terms of the sound of the vocals there, and again coming out of it, there's really interesting guitar, strange noises overlaid, which definitely gives it a lot more interest than the sort of meat and potatoes rock sound that's before. Yeah, interesting. Yes, that's it. What a strange ending. That's quite an 80s metal band, sort of almost militaristic, sort of pop to. Yeah, what a strange ending. Yeah, really short song as well. I mean, it says 2:48, but more like 2:35 or something. Yeah, really short. Yeah, interesting. I mean, I know this is the start of grunge, as it were, but I think, especially with all these conversations that we've had over the past couple of years, with Andy bringing sort of grunge music to the channel, um, and being sort of quite wary of my response, I've come to understand that I think grunge, what people picture as the grunge sound, can be very different from person to person. I don't think there's a total overall, maybe Nirvana, I guess, sort of rides it all out. But I think a lot of grunge sounds, and the ones we really, or I particularly dismissed over on this side of the pond, but the ones that came from, that were more based on a sort of heavy metal sound, which then adapted. I think a grunge sort of took heavy metal, punk as well, and then a bit of this weird art noise, Sonic Youth type stuff, blended it in and distorted it, and come up with this really sort of angst but interesting sounding stuff. That was really powerful. But I think certain bands come more from a punk leaning, and certain bands come from more from a heavy metal leaning. I think it's the heavy metal type ones that I disliked more, like Pearl Jam, etc. And this is more leaning towards that, and so this doesn't really float my boat. It's okay, I don't dislike it, but it doesn't do much for me. And if this is the start, I don't know, 87, 88, 89, I heard this, it wouldn't have floated my boat back then. Mind you, Nirvana didn't either. Mudhoney definitely did, but there was that anarchic sort of punk feel to it. that probably sort of fired my imagination. I don't know. And Dinosaur Jr. as well. Thinking about that sort of sludgy sound which they created as well was really early. Dinosaur Jr. was really interesting as well, and well ahead of their time, well ahead of grunge anyway. Yeah, this is all really interesting stuff. So let's go back and chop it up some more with Andy.
All right, so you are back from being hunted down, John. What did you think of Soundgarden in this track?
So we start with a sound not unlike a model airplane, which is aflame and nosediving towards the municipal sports complex. The guitar riff that sort of accompanies this smoking 1 in 72 replica is for me reminiscent. It sounds like a lost Dead Kennedys riff, um, with perhaps a little bit of the air let out, not quite so urgent.
Right.
Yeah, Easy Bay Ray would have been proud of it, I think. Just shy of the 20-second mark, we get a timely ugh, and the rest of the band kick in. I imagine a 2 foot fiery ball of balsa wood and 3D printed engine parts bouncing off the squash court walls and finishing with a hiss in the Lido. So that effect's gone. The song progresses with a slightly Sabbath rock feeling for someone who's only a passing sort of knowledge of Black Sabbath, but that's the thing that sprung to mind. Um, Very muscular, and then there's sort of like slight foreboding note within the guitar melody, and the bass and drums as well. And then in comes a second guitar, more lead, as it were, which puts some sort of elaborate sonic garnishing over the top. So there's all these really interesting little sort of pops and fizzes, but there's sort of little decorations of these little notes that are nothing to do with the song, and I really like it. Then around the 45-second point, in comes your man, Mr. Connell. Um, I think the thumbnail was playing the subliminal trick in my mind because it made him, for the first like 3 or 4 lines, sound remarkably like Ian Astbury from the Cult. And it's kind of at that time as well, when
Yeah.
87 is when they went all AC/DC, as you heard, with Little Devil. So it did sustain that illusion, but it was just there for a second. I have to be honest with you, personally, and I know, ready for the hate mail, I don't go a particular bundle on his voice. I think, but I
Wow.
recognized that he encapsulates that sort of alternative American rock sound. And I think it's a decent voice. It just doesn't do a lot for me. And there's other people. However, what I've heard from Soundgarden, I have heard him sing separately, and I think I like his voice away from this sound. But that's an unqualified opinion, really. I've not heard enough of it to say that. But yeah, opening lines are something like, "They saw you today and you're leaving. Now they want to hunt you down." And there's also a mention, I think, of like a chase and an hour escape from a pack of dogs. Puts me in mind of an escaped convict, but it could be anything, I guess. It's all about setting the scene. Um, as he sings about this part, I put the chorus or the refrain or whatever. There's multiple vocals going on there, and it gives me, again, unqualified, a bit of like Aussie feeling. And I had to say in the reaction, that's Ozzy Osbourne, not Australian. Um, um, but yeah, and in again, and it comes out of this chorusy bit with this interesting guitar bubbling notes and a bit of dissonance and really interesting stuff. And it almost reminded me that, well, I'm sure there was an old ringtone on the phones way back, probably, we're talking Nokia or something. I'm sure there's one was called Random. And it was like it was supposedly a computer going beep, 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 beep. And it's not quite that, but it's along those lines. These notes really is quite nice and unrelated, which I really like as well. So then we get another verse, sort of prowling with the hunting, and then another refrain. with the dogs howling, the song becomes even more old school, sort of metal sounding, with the repeated right now, and then this almost militaristic sort of drill repetition as the song fades. Da, 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 da.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a sort of a motif that's been used by lots of particularly 80s metal bands. You think someone like Iron Maiden or whatever does that
Yeah.
sort of thing very well. Um, and then it fades. It's a very strange way to end the song, actually, considering what's gone on to it, and you just go into this transition and then it fades. Very strange. So not too sure. Didn't pick up too many of the lyrics, but I guess they were just setting this scene and feel of someone being hunted. I don't know if it has any more narrational context to it. Um, I believe, as you said, it's like very early in the career, and it brings up this sort of grunge question again, which we've seemed to have debated and talked about quite a bit. Um, and I have come to understand. I've come to a bit of a sort of a dawning on me that I understand now that the word grunge actually means different sounds to different people. There isn't really an overall grunge sound. So what you think of as grunge, what I think of grunge, there will be an overlap, but there will be some different sort of sounds
Hmm.
to it, or the average Joe in the street or whatever. I guess Nirvana ticks the box for everyone along that line, and they're probably the only ones that really do. Um, I'm pretty dismissive of Pearl Jam, etc. But for a lot of people, they are quintessential, grunge band. Um, and I think it comes down to the sources and the inspirations of that developing grunge sound. Um, I see it, and I'll say this is right, but this is my perspective, that grunge sort of came out of like punk and heavy metal sources and sort of twisted. And you get certain bands that really were strong. I mean, like my top grunge band would be Mudhoney. Uh, well, now Green River as well. Um, um, but you get like early Dinosaur Jr., which there's that sort of heavy metal sound that becomes sludgy. Particularly "You're Living All Over Me," which I think is '87. I mean, Sludge Fest is a great song, and there's also these additional dissonant noises and art noise, almost for want of a better word, from like Sonic Youth. And you think of like Evil, which is an '86, it's before any sort of real proper grunge, and then Sister as well. Um, and I think that Pearl Jam, and to an extent, from what I've heard of Soundgarden, are more leaning on the sort of rock stroke heavy metal side of the originations of grunge. Well, I would say that Nirvana is more sort of Pixies, Sonic Youth direction, in terms of more art. Um, and with Nirvana, a shitload of Beatles tunes bunged in there as well. But anyway, um, so that's probably the division as what certain grunge I don't, and I think the way that I would say, particularly American tastes, are that rock sound is more prevalent within your overall culture, as a more of a leading sound. And so when it became commercialized, it was that more rocky sound, and they just let's put some effects on the guitars and call it grunge.
Hmm.
Um, which then both you and I can't stand all that shit that followed afterwards. The death of grunge, as it were. So
Yeah.
yeah, with this one, I didn't mind the song. I don't think it did anything particular for me. It was of that, yeah, that kind of rocky Sabbathy thing. But then I'm starting to sort of listen to a bit of Sabbath, so this is possibly something that could grow on me. But it wouldn't. This is like mid late '80s, isn't it? It wouldn't have appealed to me then at all.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the
I can
difference.
understand.
But yeah, it was interesting because it makes me think about it a bit more rather than just being fucking Pearl Jam and dismissing
Yeah. Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there
Interesting
you go.
stuff. I see a lot of what you're saying and agree with a lot of what you're saying. I don't know if I would say maybe, and maybe I'm misinterpreting this and we can clarify, but like the leaning into rock element that Soundgarden and Pearl Jam both do, I think exists, but I don't think that the end result is very much the same as far as what Pearl Jam sounds like and what Soundgarden sounds like. Um, and that's the only area where I would split hairs on any of the assessment that you just put forward. I even think in some of our previous, in our probably our Alice in Chains conversation, I told you that all four of them are considered like the big four of grunge music, but that they all have a different approach to grunge music. And you hear a lot more blues and like even almost like a dash of country in some of what Alice in Chains brings to the grunge table, and that Nirvana was this art aspect or art rock aspect of grunge music. Um, I went through it, and Soundgarden is very much the sludgier kind of Sabbath born aspect or looking glass through which they view grunge music. So yeah, I totally agree with you about that in the different approaches that the four of them took, even though they all sort of gained popularity around the same time and represented the same subgenre. Um, but yeah, really interested to hear your opinion on that, and I will probably bring a little bit more Soundgarden down the road. Also, I got some more Sabbath in line in the next couple of weeks, so he's up there on going rogue on me. But go ahead. What were you gonna say there, John?
Yeah, just yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before. Some of these really nonsense sort of movements, and there's no doubt that grunge was a thing
Yeah,
and a label. But whether you were, like Britpop, there's lots of bands that hated that label.
yeah,
Suede we spoke about recently that um, yeah, I hated it as well. Um, but I think one of the other sort of things for myself as a young guy, as a teenager in the mid to late 80s, was Sub Pop was another thing, and I believe they started on Sub Pop as well.
yes, yep,
Yeah, and that was like a mark of almost respect. Shit that come from Sub Pop. There's some awful crap come out of Sub Pop, but
of course, yeah,
but also you did have Mudhoney, you did have the Melvins, you did have stuff like that. It's like wow, you know, if it's on Sub Pop, it's probably quite cool.
yeah,
But if I don't
exactly.
like it, it's because I don't understand it. And
Uh-huh.
that's the
Or at
sort of
least you were willing to give them the benefit of that doubt, right? You know what I mean? As you might not do with other labels around the same time. Yeah, they Sub Pop took risks with certain bands, but good. Like, thank God that there was a label out there willing to do that. You know
oh,
what I mean? As opposed to just churning out this, manufactured bullshit sound. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
but yeah, it just makes me remember. I remember there was a guy that I used to see in town every week, and he always had a Sub Pop T-shirt on, so he was known as Sub Pop Steve.
Yeah.
Um, and I was the only fuck who was wearing Sonic Youth T-shirts.
And it's funny
Two
you
others
mentioned
to
Sub
play.
Pop t-shirts because I literally have a couple of them like in a shopping cart right now where I'm like contemplating when I'm going to purchase them, but I'm going to. I definitely am, you know what I mean? Because they were a great pioneer label during
Yeah,
this
big
this
time.
period. So let me get into Soundgarden. They were an American rock band formed in Seattle, Washington in 1984 by singer and drummer Chris Cornell, lead guitarist Kim Tile, and bassist Hiro Yamamoto. Cornell switched to rhythm guitar in '85, replaced on drums initially by Scott Sundquist and later by Matt Cameron by 1986. Yamamoto left the band in '89 and was replaced initially by Jason Everman and shortly thereafter Ben Shepherd. Soundgarden officially disbanded in 1997 but reformed later in 2010, and we will get into that. Soundgarden was one of the pioneers of grunge music, which mixed elements of punk rock and metal. There you go, exactly what you kind of said earlier, to make a sludgy, murky sound through the use of fuzzy sounding distortion in the guitars. Developed in the American Pacific Northwest in the mid 80s, the band helped to popularize grunge in the early 90s alongside such Seattle contemporaries as the aforementioned Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, and of course, Nirvana. Soundgarden cited Minutemen, the Meat Puppets, Butthole Surfers, Wire, and Joy Division as key early influences. Black Sabbath also had a significant impact on the band's sound, especially on the guitar riffs and tunings. Guitarist Kim Tile has described the band's sound as Sabbath influenced punk. Soundgarden has been frequently compared to Led Zeppelin as well. Their early sound being described as consisting of gnarled neo-Zeppelinisms, which is an interesting way to describe their early sound. The Butthole Surfers' mix of punk, heavy metal, and noise rock was a major influence in the or on the early work of Soundgarden. They, like other early grunge bands, were also influenced by British post-punk bands such as Gang of Four and Bauhaus, which were popular in the early 80s Seattle scene. The band was also influenced by the likes of the Ramones, Kiss, Accept, the Melvins, and Saint Vitus. The name of the band, according to Tile, was supposed to include the many roots of their sound that included a virtual plethora of cutting-edge rock that spans Velvet Underground, Meat Puppets, and Killing Joke, he said in a quote. Cornell himself said, "When Soundgarden formed, we were post-punk, pretty quirky. Then somehow we found this neo-Sabbath psychedelic rock that fitted well with what we were." They were the first of a number of grunge bands to sign to the Seattle-based record label Sub Pop. So that's what I meant when I said that they were sort of the first of the big four or the pioneers, and that they were the first to sign with the aforementioned and much lauded Sub Pop Records. And through Sub Pop, they released two EPs, Screaming Life in '87 and Fop in 1988. Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain was a fan of Soundgarden's music, and reportedly, Soundgarden's involvement with Sub Pop is what influenced Cobain to sign Nirvana with the label. Cobain also stated that Soundgarden was one of the only Seattle bands that he liked, along with Tad and Mudhoney. And another Pacific Northwest grunge legend, Alice in Chains guitarist and vocalist Jerry Cantrell, stated that Soundgarden was a big influence on his band as well. Soundgarden's debut album, Ultra Mega OK, was also released in 1988 by Los Angeles-based independent label SST Records. Although the album did not sell well nationally, it garnered critical acclaim and the band's first Grammy Award nomination. Soundgarden was the first grunge band to be signed to a major label when they signed to A&M Records in '88. The release of their second album, Louder Than Love, in '89, was the band's first album to enter the Billboard 200 chart, peaking at number 108 and spawned two radio hits, Hands All Over and Loud Love. Soundgarden's third album, Bad Motor Finger, all stylized one word, released in '91, helped usher in the mainstream success of grunge. The album was buoyed by the success of the singles Jesus Christ Pose, Outshined, and Rusty Cage. And the aforementioned Rusty Cage reached Bad Motor Finger, forgive me, reached number 39 on the Billboard 200 and has been certified double platinum by the RIAA. The band's fourth album, Super Unknown, released in '94, expanded their popularity. It debuted at number one on the Billboard 200 and yielded the Grammy Award-winning singles Spoon Man and Black Hole Sun, which, if you put a gun to my head, I would have assumed one or both of those two were the songs you heard in passing. Soundgarden experimented with new sonic textures on their follow-up album, Down on the Upside, released in '96, which debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and spawned several singles of its own, including Pretty Noose, Burden in My Hand, and Blow Up the Outside World. In 1997, the band broke up due to internal strife over its creative direction and the exhaustion from touring. Cornell released a solo album in September of '99 entitled Euphoria Morning, which featured Matt Cameron on the track Disappearing One. By May 2001, Cornell had joined the platinum-selling supergroup Audioslave with Tom Morello, Tim Comerford, and Brad Wilk of, then at that point, former members of Rage Against the Machine. And together they recorded 3 albums, self-titled Audioslave in 2002, Out of Exile in 2005, and Revelations a year later in '06. Cornell left Audioslave in early 2007, resulting in the band's breakup. His second solo album, Carry On, was released in 2007, and his third solo album, Scream, produced by Timbaland, was released in March of 2009. Cornell also wrote lyrics and provided vocals for the song Promise, on Slash's debut solo album, Slash, released in 2010. Tile joined forces with former Dead Kennedy singer Jello Biafra, former Nirvana bassist Chris Novoselic, and drummer Gina Mainwall for one show, performing as the No WTO combo during the World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference in Seattle on December 1st, 1999. I have to think that this is around the same time Mike Doughty saw a guy in Nikes trying to bust up a Starbucks in the Pacific Northwest around this time, and that's what inspired that song. So that same guy Nikes may have attended that show where he saw that supergroup form. Tile contributed guitar tracks to Steve Fisk's 2001 album 999 Levels of Undo, as well as Dave Grohl's 2004 one-off album Probot. Cameron initially turned his efforts to his side project, Wellwater Conspiracy, to which both Shepherd and Tile had contributed. He then worked briefly with Smashing Pumpkins on the band's 1998 album Adore. That same year, he played drums for Pearl Jam's Yield Tour following Jack Irons's departure, and later became an official member of the band, remaining until his departure in July of this past year, 2025. He recorded 7 albums with Pearl Jam. Cameron also played percussion on Geddy Lee's album My Favorite Headache. In 2017, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of Pearl Jam. Shepherd was the singer on Wellwater Conspiracy's 1997 debut album Declaration of Conformity, but left the band after its release. He toured with Mark Lanigan and played bass on 2 of Lanigan's albums, I'll Take Care of You in '99 and Field Songs in 2001. Shepherd and Cameron lent a hand with recording Tony Iommi's album Iommi in 2000. While they were members of Soundgarden, they were part of the side project band Hater, and in 2005, Shepherd released the band's long-delayed second album, aptly named The Second. After more than a decade of working on projects and other bands, Soundgarden reunited in 2010. Republic Records released their 6th and final studio album, King Animal, in 2012. On May 18th of 2017, unfortunately, Chris Cornell was found dead with a band around his neck, according to his representative, Brian Bumbry. Cornell was in his room at the MGM Grand Hotel and Casino in Detroit, Michigan, after performing at the Fox Theater with Soundgarden. From the outset, the investigation into the singer's death was described by a local police spokesperson as that of a possible suicide, based on unspecified details in the room where his body was discovered. Subsequently, the Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office determined that the cause of death was suicide by hanging. However, Cornell's widow, Vicky, questioned whether he would have deliberately ended his own life, and said that the drug Ativan, which her husband was taking, might have led him to commit suicide. She said, I know that he loved our children, and he would not hurt them by intentionally taking his own life. Following Cornell's death, Soundgarden canceled the rest of their 2017 tour, including headlining performances at the Rock on the Range and Rocklahoma later that month. By 2019, Soundgarden had sold more than 14 million records in the United States and an estimated 30 million worldwide. VH1 ranked them as the number 14 band in their special 100 Greatest Artists of Hard Rock list. The band was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2025. So one of their members is actually a dual inductee to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Following Cornell's death in 2017, Tile declared later in October 2018 that Soundgarden had disbanded for a second and final time. The surviving members of the band had continued to occasionally work together since then, including reuniting for a one-off concert in tribute to Cornell in January of 2019, and again in December of 2024 for a benefit concert in Seattle with Shayna Shepherd on vocals under the anagram Nude Dragons. So Nude Dragons is what they went by. This track, Hunted Down, features on the band's earliest recording, Screaming Life, the debut EP released in '87 by Sub Pop. It was later combined with the band's next EP, Fop, in 1988, and released as the Screaming Life slash Fop compilation album in 1990. The EP was recorded in Seattle, Washington at Reciprocal Recordings with producer Jack Endino, who also produced the albums for Nirvana and Mudhoney. The EP was recorded a year prior to its release and was held up due to financial reasons at Sub Pop. Drummer Matt Cameron described the sound on the EP as pretty raw. Hunted Down, Soundgarden's first single, is representative of that early grunge sound with its dirty guitar, dissonant atmosphere, and lyrics concerning entrapment and escape. Speaking on this track, Tile noted, that song wasn't supposed to be as heavy sounding as it turned out. We just started jamming on the riff, and it took on the noise rock dimensions, kind of a rhythmic thing, and the solo is a noise solo. It's very dissonant. Both Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal and Spin Alternative Record Guide graded the EP a 9 out of 10. In an article for Pop Matters published back in February of 2025, Jeremy McDonough wrote this of the track. Hunted Down set the scene for Soundgarden's first EP, Screaming Life, with guitarist Kim Tile channeling Jimi Hendrix' Voodoo Child, using feedback to mimic a fighter plane roaring overhead before his main riff establishes the song as the most conventional punkish onslaught on the album. It was Soundgarden's first single and continued to be played in concerts beyond the band's 2010 reunion. Adding distorted guitar harmonics fly like fireworks around Tile's riffs. Cornell's vocals are at their most muscular of Soundgarden's early days, as his paranoid tale of hostile pursuit foreshadows the track Rusty Cage, which I was also debating giving you, so maybe down the line. The song closes on a frenetic coda concocted by drummer Matt Cameron before fading out into darkness. So, these lyrics. They saw you today as you were leaving. Now they run to hunt you down. Dogs lead the chase. You are bleeding. They run to hunt you down. Your narrow escape has wiped the smile right from your face. Those starved dogs howling run to hunt you down. As they run, hunt you down. You smile as you look in the mirror. Tears have left your eyes. Your face has a different exterior, permanent disguise. Your narrow escape has wiped a smile right from your face. Those starved dogs howling run to hunt you down. As they run, hunt you down right now, right now, right now, right now, right now, right now. So, Soundgarden has been praised for its technical musical ability and the expansion of its sound as the band's career progressed. Heavy yet ethereal, powerful yet always in control, Soundgarden's music was a study in contrasts, said Henry Wilson of Hit Parader. Wilson proclaimed the band's music as a brilliant display of technical proficiency tempered by heartfelt emotion. Soundgarden is one of the bands credited with the development of the alternative metal genre, with AllMusic Stephen Thomas Erlewine stating that Soundgarden made a place for heavy metal in alternative rock. Ben Ratliff of Rolling Stone defined Soundgarden as the standard bearers of the rock riff during the 1990s. Several bands and artists from different genres have cited Soundgarden as an influence, including Biffy Clyro, Stabbing Westward, The Dillinger Escape Plan, Cave In, Iceburn, The Fierce and the Dead, and Amy Lee of the band Evanescence. The members of Pantera have cited Soundgarden's second album, Louder Than Love, as one of the inspirations behind the directional change from glam metal to a more heavier groove sound on their 1990 album, Cowboys from Hell. And Metallica guitarist Kirk Hammett has claimed that the riffs for Enter Sandman were inspired by Soundgarden. So there you are, Soundgarden, a very obviously influential band, not only in the grunge scene, but in the metal and alternative metal scenes that would sort of run parallel and then beyond what grunge did. So yeah, a wildly influential band from the Pacific Northwest that I wanted to bring to the channel, if for no other reason than to kind of shed light on one of the other big fours that came out of that movement. So thank you so much for giving it a go, John. I appreciate you, man.
No problem at all.
Excellent, excellent. Well, guys out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you think of this song, Hunted Down by Soundgarden. If there's other stuff from them that we should check out, please feel free to shout it down in the comments field below, and we will add it to our ever-growing list of song recommendations, especially if it's not one of the ones that I already had in mind for a future listen. But yeah, love to hear from you guys, so please feel free to shout anything down below. Also like, share, and or subscribe if you haven't done any or all of those things. Goes a long way to help us over here at the channel, and we really do appreciate it. And with all that out of the way, hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.